first four, and it pretty much was a description of war. Then we opened the fifth seal, and the fifth seal said was the justice seal, and the martyrs throughout the years were wanting to know when justice was going to be brought about. That sounds selfish.
No,
Should you want justice?
I do.
Should you want revenge?
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
You
I
shouldn't
we
want
are doing.
revenge. But you ought to want justice. Justice ought to be something that we seek. Justice is something that's good because it keeps the chaos in check. When I was a kid, you very seldom heard about a murder. Now there's 9 a day in Chicago because there's no penalty for it anymore. And so they don't think twice about it.
We were talking about that the other day. If you don't believe in God, what makes you be good at all? I mean, if there's no threat of hell, then why wouldn't you just go and take what you want?
Yeah, do whatever you want to do. And the second thing is, when we lose the sanctity of life, and I don't care what kind of life it is, I was taught when I was a young kid, if you kill something, it had better been either threatening your life or you were hungry. And if you killed it, you used every single bit of it that you possibly could. You didn't just take the choice cut and throw the rest away. You used everything. Even if it was frozen for dog food in the winter, you did not just throw it away. You used everything because there is sanctity in life. Well, then we got abortion, and there was no sanctity in life, and now we're in a society that does not respect life at all because we didn't stand up and say, life is special, life is good, and we can't do this. We also, what about the justice for the unborn? I mean, they're as innocent as you can get, they're as helpless as you can get, and there's video of them fighting the scalpel in the womb, trying to get away from the person who was aborting. And to say that it doesn't count because they haven't taken their first breath yet,
I mean,
that's
look it
sad.
up, bad.
Huh?
Josh's mouth is hanging open.
Bill, I had the same conversation. It's amazing that came out immediately right off the bat, because I had that conversation on Friday morning, and it completely set my day in motion and had me just completely tore up. All the rest of the day, my uncle, who is about your age, career military man, flew helicopters in and out of Vietnam. I mean, wonderful man. I love him dearly, always have, but he is lost. And I had breakfast with him, and the conversation, he made it kind of led into politics, and then he made some thing about how we shouldn't be making any laws that have anything to do with religion. Religion shouldn't have anything to do with making laws. And I said, well, if you don't have a standard of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil, how do you determine what a law should be? You don't have anything to base on. And then he made a comment about abortion, and that's what opened up the whole Pandora's box. And it led into me trying to witness to him again, and it broke my heart. I don't think he thinks hell is real. I don't think he thinks, and when you have someone looking at you telling you that, it should be someone's choice to do whatever they want to do, and they have no respect for life, and then to look at me and say, well, it's my choice to make. If I go to hell, then that's my choice to make. And I said, it is your choice to make. And unfortunately, if you make the wrong one, God will still honor it.
Mm-hmm.
And I came away and that's just been so on my heart. That's what I try to tell him. If you don't appreciate life and you don't have any value to life and to protect life, everything else is just messed up.
She sent me a text, she was extremely
And-
upset, got ugly.
And you know what's next after abortion, don't you?
Euthanasia.
Euthanasia. I've already been notified that when I get 75, cancer treatment will no longer be an option in my health care. Now, I'm not planning on having cancer, but,
Who does?
No, we'll lay hands on you and it'll be okay.
Obamacare has a death panel. Yeah, we'll just pray, right?
That's right.
And it'll go away,
You don't need insurance.
right? Jenny?
Yep.
We prayed for Jennifer last Sunday night. And the chills and the fever just went away. Now, she was still weak for a couple days because she had been fighting it for a while. But after we prayed, guys, Jennifer said that the chills and the fever were gone as she walked out the door. Praise God. I don't need Obamacare, I got God. And if that's my ticket home, that's my ticket home. I'll just check out that way. But the sad thing is, there's almost, and they're going to base it on the fact that the world is overpopulated and there's not enough food and there's not enough room. And that's not true.
It doesn't start with the young people.
Hmm?
That doesn't start with the young people.
No. No, you know, they believe what we teach them when they're young, and they live by those rules all the way through. Okay, that brings us to seal number 6, and we read that last week, but we really didn't get into it very much. So 12, 13, and 14.
And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as the fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places.
Okay. Well, we kind of hinted at it last week. All the mountains and islands are going to disappear. They're going to be taken away. Originally there was one continent. And then the flood came and the waters came up and pushed the continents apart, buckled the crust and made the mountains. And if you push those mountains back down, the Rocky Mountains, the White Mountains, the Bighorns, the Ozarks, the Appalachians, the Swiss Mountains, the mountains of Ariat, Ural Mountains, what's the big Alps, the Alps. If you push them all down flat, look at how much land mass you gain. And if you push them all down flat, it closes up the Atlantic Ocean. And we talked also a couple weeks ago about mountains causing most of the storm patterns and the problems on Earth are caused by mountains, erosion and different things. So it looks like God's going to put it back the way it was, but this also looks a lot like a nuclear exchange. And do you know why, you know, Iran's only reason for wanting a nuclear bomb? They've stated it in public dozens of times. You know what their only purpose for having a
Get rid
nuclear
of
bomb is?
Israel.
To destroy Israel. That's the only reason they want it. Do you think they can do that?
No.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna let it, maybe. Huh?
I was in Vietnam in 1967, and I was just about to leave. And they had a thing there, if you had less than 6 weeks left when you got back, you didn't have to finish out your 2 years. They would just process you out, and you could go. I could go home in November. And then the 7-day war broke out in Israel, and they put all that on hold. They said, nobody's leaving early, we may need you in the Middle East. You know, and I'd just spent a year in Vietnam, and I thought, great. This is just what I'm going from a swamp to a desert. Yeah, I really want to do this. And then Israel just literally wiped out all the Arab nations within 500 miles of them. I mean, in 7 days, they took out every missile base, they took out every airport, every Russian MiG, they took out everything. It was a total wash. And you'd have thought somebody would have said, maybe there is something to this God thing, and maybe these are the chosen people, because they didn't have a chance of doing that. There wasn't a chance that Israel could be totally surrounded by all these Arab nations and all this Russian technology, and this little bitty green spot in the middle of nowhere would rise up and conquer 8 different Arab nations in 7 days. Do you think God didn't have something to do with that? How many of you think it was luck? Or the great skill of the Israeli army and Air Force? No. God protected.
Seven. I mean, we just talked about the numbers. It was
Yeah.
7 days.
7 days, exactly 7 days. And they just literally mopped up the Arab nations and wiped out everything they had. And for years, they couldn't hardly fly from one nation to the next because their airports were totally destroyed. The Israelites are God's people, and He has promised Abraham that He's going to take care of them. Whether they're good or whether they're bad, He made a covenant with Abraham that He's going to take care of Israel. And He'll bless anybody that blesses Israel and curse anybody that curses Israel. So Iran doesn't have a chance of doing this. But it does look a lot like a nuclear exchange here, because the descriptions, the great earthquake, when that atomic bomb goes off, everything for thousands of miles feels it, okay? The sun is turned dark like looking through sackcloth. And we talked about the ash and all the dust and everything that would rise up into the atmosphere and cloak the sun and dim it. The moon would turn to blood. Well, remember, we got a 1st century man describing a 21st century war. And if you remember when Mount St. Helens blew up, the sunsets and the sunrises and the moon had a pinkish tint to them. And the sunsets were brilliant red because of the dust and the ash that was in the air from that Mount St. Helens thing. And then now in the Middle East, we've got Russia and Syria built an air base, and they have nuclear capability. India is starting to turn Muslim. They have nuclear capability. Iran is developing nuclear capability with the help of Russia and North Korea. And all these nations are surrounding Israel. Do you remember when we went into Kuwait and we pushed Saddam out of Kuwait, and Saddam started shooting Scud missiles at Israel, or Patriot missile. They were shooting Scud missiles at Israel, and our Patriot missile was shooting them down 97% of the time. And the ones that we missed blew up in midair, like there was an angel up there slapping them out of the sky. Do you know what the success rate of the Patriot missile was prior to being shipped to Israel? You don't know, do you? Want me to tell you? 19%.
I was gonna say that.
We ship it over to Israel, we set it up, and that 19% turns into 97%. Do you think our Patriot missile was that good? No, it was, you know, the people at the Patriot, they went to the Patriot missile manufacturing plant, and they interviewed the people that were making them, and they kind of scratched their head and said, well, it's kind of amazing. It must be they work better in the desert than they do here, because we could only hit about 19% of our targets. We sent them over to Israel to hit 97% of the targets. You think God's not in that someplace? They're not going to wipe out Israel. They may shoot those missiles at them, but they're going to get slapped out of the sky pretty regularly, because God has made a promise to Abraham. Now, the rest of this could happen. I mean, if those nuclear bombs explode in the sky, look at the description there. It's like the sky rolled up. If you've ever seen a nuclear test, it goes up, the cloud goes up, and it's called a mushroom cloud, and then that huge tower of heat rises up and pushes all the clouds sideways, and then they bounce back and they roll back in like a scroll rolling up. Those clouds get pushed back in a big circle, and then they come slamming back into the center like a sky. And if you consider that this is a first century man trying to describe a 21st century event, I mean, what's he going to say? Well, there was a nuclear exchange. He didn't have the vocabulary, he didn't have the word, he didn't know what nuclear meant. But he saw what he saw, and he described it the best he possibly could. And everything about this says that some dummy over there, probably Iran, is going to try and shoot off a nuclear bomb. And at the same time, God is going to reestablish the earth the way it was meant to be in the beginning and the way it works best. Okay, 15 to the end.
Then the king of earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty, and every slave and every free man hid in the cave and among the rocks of the mountains. They called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, or hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of the wrath has come, and who can stand?
What's this tell you about the hearts of men? How many innocent people are going to end up in hell? Yeah. These people know why this is happening, and they don't want to admit it. But basically down in their heart, they know they've been wrong all this time. They know that this has come from God. It's a warning from God. Do we heed God's warnings? Do we?
Some of us. Sometimes.
Some of the time.
Some of the time.
Some of us, some of the time, heed God's warnings. You remember New Orleans and Katrina? And New Orleans just gets wiped off the face of the map. The week before, they're going to have the International Porn Convention, Pornography Convention. And Katrina comes in and just wipes out New Orleans. And everybody in New Orleans jumped up and said, we need help, we need help, we need help. Do you know what the mayor of New Orleans did? He went out and he got generators, and he got cleaning crews to come in and clean up the hotel where they were going to have the porn convention. And all the people are dying on the rooftops in New Orleans. And he goes out and he does everything he can to keep that convention coming. And he did. He did.
He got on TV and cussed like a sailor. I remember that.
Yep. 7 years later, to the day, Hurricane Jacob followed the exact same path that Katrina did and smacked New Orleans right between the eyes 7 years later to the day, named Jacob. And do you think they got the message?
No.
No. They're just as wicked and it's just as ugly. You ever been there? As you get closer and closer and closer, the sun can be shining bright, but there's a dimness hangs over that place. And the closer I got to it, the more nervous and anxious I felt. New Orleans is no place for a Christian to be, unless he's trying to save souls. there is nothing down there for us. And you just can't get close to the place and even feel halfway comfortable about being there. Your spirit just turns sour right inside of you.